really heard him speaking from the mountain, they shook and they covered their head and their ears, and they said to Moses, "Don't let him do that anymore." There was no question that God was speaking. They knew who it was. So from then on, it was more of a rumbling for them that they heard. But it was always a reminder that God was there. He always gave them a visual reminder, he gave them an auditory reminder, and then he gave them physical reminders, things that they had to do to keep the laws and decrees. And God had given Moses so many different laws and decrees that the Israelites were constantly trying to keep up with them. But there was a point to that. It was so that they wouldn't forget to keep God at the center. To a degree, it was that they were kept so busy doing it that they didn't have time for the other distractions of the world. The problem was that when they got into the promised land, they started to move away from those things and they fell away from God. And as they did that, exactly what Moses predicted in this passage would happen. They fell away, they got carried off into exile. But then finally, when they had lamented enough and when they had turned to the Lord enough and when they had genuinely sought after him with their heart, what happened? He restored that remnant back to Israel, and he allowed it to be built up. In fact, he even had the nation that had been keeping them captive at this time, the Persian government, not only issue a decree to say they could return, but they actually financed and gave the materials for them to rebuild the city. Well, what about us? When I thought about this topic, he's everything to me, I'm going to throw out the question to you. This is the only question I'm going to ask, but I want to hear maybe if you come up with a couple of answers here, what your response is to this. How would you define everything? Anybody?
Hope.
Again?
Hope.
Hope? Okay. Hope. What else? Say again. At all times. The Lord is my light and my salvation. What was the other? Joy and sorrow. Okay. What else? It's not an easy thing to define, is it? Would it help you if I gave you the antonym? The antonym to everything is nothing. Do you ever think about that? If we say that God is our everything, then there should be nothing left in our life that doesn't involve God. I don't know about for you, but for me, that really turns the heat up. There's a lot of different areas I think I allow myself to go where God isn't at the center. Now, that's not something I'm proud of, but it really helps me in this passage, and this whole topic kind of helps me be a little bit more convicted about, I sang those songs back there too, but I really focused on those words tonight because I obviously had to be the one to come up here and talk tonight about this topic. But I thought about those words and I thought, they're really great songs. And they really say some awesome things. And they really make you feel good. But do you really mean every single word that you sang tonight? Do you really live every single word? That's the question. When we say that he's our everything, that is absolutely what the goal should be for every one of us. But that's, I think, the key word there is that's the goal. God knows that that we're human and that we're not going to be perfect in everything we do, but he doesn't let us off the hook with that. No, he says, you need to keep trying, and I need to see improvement. That's, when you're transformed, it's a person that's going to continually strive for improvement. He is our everything. The antonym is nothing. And I thought, well, how can we better describe that? When I was first in optometry school and we were beginning to learn about the eye and we were beginning to learn about lenses and prescriptions and how refraction works with regard to determining what a person's correction or glasses or refractive error would be. It all started with the instructor walked up and he drew a line and he drew a little dot on the top and he drew two lines kind of spraying out away from that. And he said, what you need to understand is everything that we will do here is we will base all of our calculations off of infinity.